What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to EP09. All right, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Welcome back to EP09 Bodybuilding. We're going to start this one off today with an update from James Hollingshead. James currently working through an off-season. Now, when it comes to James being in an off-season setting, this is actually very, very good conditioning, I think, considering the fact that James has nothing on the radar that he's announced when it comes to a show, and the fact that James is still looking for continuous improvement. You know, we've seen James in much, much worse shape than this in his offseason. There's no question there. So, still staying within, I think, a reasonable striking distance to do something maybe early 2026. I doubt that he's trying to do anything when it comes to maybe post-Olympia 2025. But you know what? Based on what we're seeing here, it's possible. Now, for improvements for James, you know, I really think that when the arms come up in size in particular, that's going to make a huge, huge difference when it comes to the balance from top to bottom of his overall physique. You can see the quad sweep, you know, ridiculous quad sweep, very good balance in that sense. It really just comes down to the arms from the front. But when you do see James from the side, you know, not really an issue. Very, very thick side chest for James Hollingshead. Excellent off-season physique right now, still working with Boss of Outlaw as far as I know, and that seems to be a formula that is working for James Hollingshead. You know, we've seen James go through a couple of different coaches over the last couple of years. Nothing really seemed to work because James really had trouble giving up an amount of control to somebody else. So, what is it that James is doing in order to kind of mitigate those feelings now? Well, James has found his stride in controlling everything when it comes to his training. That is one area that James definitely has on lockdown. He is a bodybuilder's bodybuilder when it comes to training intensity, when it comes to training technique. And you know, I think this formula of James really controlling the training and now working with Boss of Outlaw is still something that's relatively new. You know, this will be the second season going into training with Boss of Outlaw, doing a competition prep with him. I think that now the knowledge has been gained at this point, and I think they do stand to bring a better package when it comes to the next time James does hit the stage. And this was the last time we saw James Hollingshead on a bodybuilding stage, taking third place at the 2025 Detroit Pro. I think this was a good package for James Hollingshead, especially from the back. You guys can see he was absolutely ripped to death. That side chest, absolutely deadly. But still, he seemed to have a little bit of a sheen overall when it comes to his overall physique. And I think that the tan was just a bit too dark as well. And that can actually end up being a detraction for competitors. You got to get that color just right. But regardless, James definitely still has a lot of room to improve between him and Boss of Outlaw. So again, this off-season physique update of James Hollingshead, I think is very encouraging. And I think that 2026 could definitely be the season that we see the best version of James Hollingshead step on a bodybuilding stage. All right, next up, we have a physique update from Beef Stew, Stuart Sutherland, at 2 weeks out of the Tampa Pro, also 3 weeks out of the Texas Pro. And this is a fantastic version of Beef Stew. You know, he's actually been in this type of condition for weeks now. It seems like it was almost around like the 7 or 6 week out mark that he finally had to say, you know what, we need to add in more calories. He was very, very lean very early. I don't know if that was necessarily by design or if that's just how he responded. But either way, we are seeing a full-on death face from Beef Stew right now, looking absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? I actually think that this guy, once you actually look at his quads, take a look at the quads in particular, I think he has some of the best quads that you'll find on an open stage right now. In terms of that roundness, you know, the shape of the quads, it's actually very, very good and maybe even underrated, you know, when you consider what they actually look like. Also, when it comes to the back, the one thing that Beef Stew has really had to work on is the back. The overall width, the overall thickness, these are the things that really needed to be improved. Now, in particular, we're talking about the back double bicep. You can see that the back lat spread, they can really contend with any of the back lat spreads I think that he'll find in either Tampa or Texas. Has always been very, very good in that pose, but just lacking a little bit of that overall width when it comes to the back double in particular. But take a look at the overall back progress that Beef Stew has made in just 1 year. On the right, you have 2 weeks out from the New York Pro 2024. On the left, the picture we just saw 2 weeks out from Tampa Pro 2025. So you can definitely see improvements here. And look, let's forget about the fact that this might be a little bit different lighting in a different room. Overall, you guys, I think this is very, very comparable. And I think that you can see some pretty drastic differences between one to the other. I think that we are seeing more depth when it comes to the left side picture, you know, the most recent picture. You can see those little details really coming through where you didn't necessarily see them at 2 weeks out in 2024. So whatever they're doing right now between him and his coach, Blue Taylor, it is definitely working. And the name of the game, you guys, is steady progress. And Beef Stew, I think, is making that steady progress. You know, as long as they can maintain this conditioning going into the show and show up bursting full, I think that he's definitely going to be in that first call out. But without a doubt, Tampa is going to be a very, very stacked show, which is actually something that was surprising for me. You know, we've got some very good competitors coming up in Tampa. We've got Beef Stew, we've got Quint Beastwood, Justin Shire. I actually saw that Amir Omaragic is doing that show. Let's not forget guys like John De La Rosa going to be at the Tampa Pro. Patrick Moore, Morgan McDonald. You guys, excellent lineup. This is going to be a very good test, I think, for Beef Stew coming back to the stage, especially after taking 5th place at the 2024 Vancouver Pro. You guys, he was very disappointed with this package that he brought to the stage. You know, this was not a very good version of Beef Stew. So he is looking to get back on stage. He is looking to show everyone exactly what it is that he's made out of. He has taken the time, he has made the improvements, and he's ready to go. So you guys let me know what you think of this current version of Beef Stew, and let me know where you think he will land in the 2025 Tampa Pro lineup. All right, next up, we've got an update from Carlos Thomas Jr., someone that we have not spoken about since his return to the stage at the 2025 Arnold Classic. Carlos doing a guest posing here at the Yokota US-Japan Friendship Cup. And you know, this was something that I think was fairly unexpected. When we really don't hear something from a competitor for quite some time, and then we see them come out with a guest posing, I was a little bit surprised. But for how Carlos is actually looking here right now, he's obviously very big, very thick, and we did have a show announcement from Carlos Thomas Jr. as well. And the show that he picked, it actually makes sense as to why he's in the current shape that he's in. But as per the current shape, the legs look absolutely massive, you guys. The whole thing, his entire physique right now, he is out of control when it comes to the size. I think for an off-season shape, this is fairly respectable. For a guest posing shape, I guess this is passable. You know, we're not seeing him too far out of shape. You know, we're not talking when Quinton Araya did that guest posing, you know, what was it, last year? We're not seeing anything, I think, really as significant as that when it comes to body fat in particular. But, you know, one of the questions with Carlos Thomas Jr., when it comes to his overall physique, we know that this guy has the size. We know that this guy has the shape. He has the flow, you know, absolutely crazy when it comes to these things. And he has the freak factor to boot, right? So where did he need to make the improvements? Everybody knows at this point. It's the back. We needed to see Carlos Thomas Jr. bring up the back. So for what we're seeing right now for the back shots, okay, I think that we are actually seeing a bit more width from Carlos Thomas Jr. from the back. It's very difficult to tell right now until he really dials down, but for what we can see, it's possible that progress has been made in that department. So if Carlos Thomas Jr. can show up at his next show with razor sharp conditioning, as well as a better back, you know, a really lights out package when it comes to the back, this guy could be unstoppable in the IFBB Pro League. And the next show that we will see Carlos Thomas Jr. step on a bodybuilding stage will be the 2026 New York Pro. So he has plenty of time to continue to make improvements. I think that he's in a very good position here when it comes to his off season right now. You guys, let me know what you think about this current version of Carlos Thomas Jr. What do you think about his choice to come and compete at the New York Pro? You know, always a very stacked lineup. Carlos Thomas Jr. not being someone that's afraid to stand with the best of the best in bodybuilding. I mean, keep in mind, when this guy did the Arnold Classic, okay, he took 11th place, where he actually finished behind guys like Justin Rodriguez and Patrick Moore. You know, it was very disappointing. But you got to consider that we have been seeing some very substantial comebacks in bodybuilding lately. Patrick Moore taking second place at his last competition. You got to think about Nextzilla. Everybody had that guy written off, you know, showing up not in shape, skipping shows, all these things. Carlos Thomas Jr., I think, does have the ability to really meet his overall potential. We know what he has to do. We just got to see him do it. Let me know if you guys think in 2026, this will be the year that we see the best version of Carlos Thomas Jr. ever take a bodybuilding stage. All right, last up, we've got an update here from Andrew Jack, currently sitting at 12 weeks out of the Mr. Olympia. And you know what, you guys? This has kind of been a different one for Andrew Jack when it comes to his prep for this competition. We haven't been seeing a whole lot of updates online from Andrew Jack. So when he really goes essentially dark mode, I really start digging into what can we find out about Andrew Jack going into this show, right? What has he been doing? Will he still have the ability to even get to the US given the fact that he is in Dubai right now, right? Very, very difficult for anybody that's within that kind of area in the world to even get to the US. So I did some digging and I'm going to show you guys what I came up with. Now, when it comes to the current physique of Andrew Jack, I really don't think this is any better or worse than what we've seen previously from Andrew. You know, he's not really one to post many updates in particular. We really just have to wait until show day to really see what he's going to bring when it comes to improvements, when it comes to the overall package. You know, we're really not going to know until he hits the stage. It's just the kind of guy that he is, you know. Andrew, unfortunately, I think you could say for the fans, is not really someone that capitalizes on his physique when it comes to, well, really from now until the Olympia, at least not up until this point. You know, this is when you're in your best shape. This is when you can essentially make your most money at bodybuilding when it comes to you being in your best shape. So Andrew missing out on that opportunity of maximizing social media revenue during his prep, you know, like I said, when the physique is really at its best. Clearly, Andrew Jack doesn't care about that because this guy still has a career as a contractual electrical engineer, you know, still working at his career because he's never really considered bodybuilding to be a career path for him. You know, it is something that he does take seriously. You know, I think that's pretty obvious, but he still has always kept his job as an electrical engineer. And a lot of people don't realize that. So I'm going to break down some of the big questions and some of the answers to Andrew Jack when it comes to the Olympia. In a recent training video with Mike Sommerveld, Andrew actually answering some of these questions, like, will he be able to get to the US given the fact that it's very difficult to get a visa right now? And Andrew actually saying in this video that he's had that visa for quite some time. So when it comes to travel to the US, there's no issue there. When is he going to travel to the US? Andrew actually addressing that as well. His plan is to go to Los Angeles the first week of August. So that would put him at 8 weeks out of the Olympia and then travel to Vegas the first week of September, as he noted. So that would be 4 weeks before the Olympia. And actually, when I was doing some digging through some of his footage, he made some comments about how he would do things like a 6.5 week prep at the most when it comes to the Olympia. And look, we know that this guy can get in shape fairly quickly if he wants to, but we have seen that before. Think 2023 Arnold Classic. Although he was absolutely shredded and did it in a short period of time, not necessarily his best look. He lost that roundness and that fullness, you know, it just wasn't his best look. So the fact that Andrew is actually traveling to LA, I find interesting at the 8 week out mark. That tells me that he may be considering going back to train with Chris Psycho Lewis. So I don't know any reason that he's outlined why he would go there otherwise, right? So 8 weeks out, LA, 4 weeks out, Las Vegas, and all roads lead to the Olympia from there. I think the burning question is, will Andrew Jack be able to do better than his best version to date? At least in my opinion, his best version to date. 2024 Texas Pro. Absolutely ridiculous, you guys. This was, I think, Andrew Jack at his very, very best. Now, Andrew taking 5th at the 2024 Mr. Olympia. I just don't think that what he brought to that show was as good as this. Now, if he can replicate this or do better, I think that he would definitely make his way back into that first call out. But when it comes to doing better than his best placing of 5th place at the Mr. Olympia, Even for a guy like Andrew Jack, you know, considered one of the most aesthetic bodybuilders in all of open bodybuilding right now, I think it's going to be difficult when it comes to the guys that he's going to stand next to, because we are moving back toward that mass monster era. You got to think about it, right? Samson, absolutely massive. Nick, huge, absolutely huge. Hottie definitely takes up a lot of space on that stage when it comes to, you know, height to muscle ratio. These are the kind of guys that Andrew has to contend with. Despite the fact that he's one of the most aesthetic guys on stage, he does still need to bring up, I think, just that overall size. You know, if he brought up the quads in particular, that would really make a difference when it comes to that quad sweep. But look, he's still one of my personal favorites, and I do think that he will make his way back into that first call-out. But I did want to touch on at least something when it came to Andrew Jack, because we have essentially heard very little at this point. And when we don't speak about some of these top competitors, they can get lost in the mix leading up to the Olympia. So I'm going to end the video right here. Check out BayouMuscle.com. Use code EP10 at checkout. Appreciate everybody supporting the channel thus far. But that's it for me in this video, you guys. Thank you for tuning in to EP09. Be sure to like and subscribe.